We're near Jane and Finch, where police are investigating 3 separate shootings.
This is the second shooting investigation near Jane and Finch tonight.
The experience at Jane and Finch for a lot of people has been a roller coaster ride.
Media always highlighted the negative about our community. Our stories, our experiences were never really captured from our view.
Hear nothing about what we feel or what we think. We are the ones who are living here. They're saying it's going to be for our upgrade and for our betterment, but the cost that it comes with, how are we going to cope? What are we going to do?
It's looked at as, only bad come from Jane and Finch. But there's actually more good than bad that come from our community.
It would be naive of me to not understand that there is some validity in what we see in media. But I think a lot of people, like outside of Jane and Finch, conflate the community to just violence itself and like boil it down to just being numbers and statistics and bursts of violence. And like the biggest qualm that I have with media today is that people kind of like to pinpoint racialized immigrant, primarily Black communities, to being something that's just reduced down and boiled down to savagery, when that's completely not the case. And like, especially in understanding and knowing how easy it is to pinpoint immigrants and racialized people into a box of uncivility, it's really easy for people to believe that. But if people really just came to the community, they would understand that there's just way more love, community, and oneness.
I think Jane and Finch is developing in a very positive way. Now we have the Finch West LRT. I think Jane Finch Mall is going to be redeveloped into like new condo buildings, so it's going to be a lot more people coming in and able to access the area. And I think, having projects like this and videos like this, breaking down those barriers and stereotypes, that people will not be afraid of the neighborhood and they're actually going to come here and learn and meet people.
I feel like the media doesn't really do a good job on like portraying people in the community, mainly because like you don't really see like everyone. You only see like a certain type of, like person. You don't really see like the people doing the really good stuff, like there's so many, like even from like my like high school, there's so many people doing like great stuff, but you don't really see that. Like there's like people that went to law school, people that are like doing like really good stuff in the community, but like you only hear about the crime that happens, the 1-2 bad things that happen.
There have been efforts to try and display Jane and Finch better, but in comparison to like all the negativity that's been portrayed in the news and in newspapers and everything else, it's just like a small drop in a pool at this point. I feel like there are a few things that do happen in Jane and Finch where they are isolated incidents, but these things do happen. But in the same breath, these things do happen in other parts of the city and the province and the country and other parts of the world, right? And we can't just, make a bad name for every single place where bad things happen here and there. So I kind of feel like it is a bit unfair, it is a bit biased. And there's that discrepancy where it's like, something can happen at Jane and Steeles and they'll be like near the Jane and Finch area. Something can happen at Jane and Shepherd, it's near the Jane and Finch area. Finch and Weston near the Jane and Finch area, Keel and Finch near the Jane and Finch area. So it's like media has this giant block that they just, etch out, and they're like, if it's close enough to Jane and Finch, we're gonna make them a part of this. Despite that not necessarily being the case. So it's for sure unfair.
People think of Jane and Finch, you go from somewhere far, you say, oh, I'm from Jane and Finch. Oh, there's a lot of gang violence out there, there's a lot of drug dealers, there's a lot of, there's a lot of shootings out there.
But it wasn't really until I left to go to school in Ottawa when I realized how we were really being portrayed within the media based on how people would react when I told them where I was from, to the point where I used to hide that I was from Jane and Finch. Like I'd say, oh, I'm from beside York University, like I'm from North York. And then that's when I started getting more comfortable with where I'm from. And as soon as I came back, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to find ways to like reshape how my neighborhood is perceived. And so that's exactly why I joined the CBC's Jane and Finch Community Bureau.
I feel like being a Black Somali youth coming from Jane and Finch, people basically tend to label me a certain group and tend to basically judge a book by its cover because of how I dress or like, you know. So I feel like, yeah, that does play a major like role, I guess.
No, I think because like being from Jane and Finch, it's more so like I'm hungry to get out there, you know what I mean? So like any opportunity like such as like basketball, I went to Westview and no one ever thought like, oh, a kid from Westview can go to the States and play ball, like, you know? So from Westview going to like Phoenix to getting a scholarship to school in Pennsylvania, it's like a lot of those obstacles that were set in front of me made me want it even more, you know?
One of the biggest things that I found, especially being a youth, but also being somebody that works in youth programming today, is that there's no longevity in programming at all. People like to come in, do their little happy project, put numbers, do their little thing. Oh my gosh, look, I'm in Jane and Finch, and then they leave 2 years later. And then the kids that, you know, build bonds or build community end up having nothing when after those 2 years are up. But I think just for community members overall, it's like lack of housing, lack of food supports, lack of, you know, opportunities to be able to work, especially being immigrants. There's a lot of abuse that comes from being immigrants or refugees or migrants to Toronto specifically. And because, again, there's kind of like a devaluing of these specific groups of people, those accesses end up becoming a barrier along the way. And they're all connected, right? Like between youth to adults. It starts with, you know, not being able to have lunch money or breakfast in the morning, and then having a breakfast program that can only run for 2 years, but then funding dries up and then there's nothing to go to after. Or not having parents at home readily available or accessible because they have to work 2 jobs in order to pay rent and buy food. So then they go to after school programs, and then those programs end up running out after a few years and they have nowhere to go. Or looking for jobs and being able to have to turn to the street because they don't have the resources or the skill sets to be able to hold and maintain a job, or they've never had somebody show them like, hey, like working 9 to 5 looks like this. They have a certain set way of the way that these things look, so they have to find alternative ways to be able to survive. So there's just so many accesses that folks in community don't have the privilege of being able to gain, and seeing it is really like disheartening.
I think like access, to be honest, like I feel like you're not really like accessible to like a lot of resources, mainly because like if you look at the map of Toronto, like Jane and Finch is kind of like at the top, you know, like it's borderline York region, so you don't see like a lot of like, you know, like community initiatives or even like access to stuff. Like if you're into sports, like unless like you're checking via TTC or, you know, like getting your parents to drive you, there's not like a lot of like rep teams, you know, depending on what like sport you play, or there's not like a lot of community programming. So I feel like you're kind of secluded to like your little box, you know, in the northwest part of the city. So I see that's like kind of like a barrier youth face, you know, because you don't really have like money. If you live in like a single parent household, you know, or your parents are like busy working, you don't have the kind of support from like a young age to go outside your community. And usually like kids in the neighborhood, they leave their neighborhood till like after high school, so like first year out of high school or like towards grade 12. And I think that's like the biggest barrier, like not being able to access those cool things happening beyond the community. So until like they bring those stuff into the community, I feel like that'll always be a barrier, because like Jane and Finch is so like secluded. When I started like doing photography, I feel like everything was happening like downtown, you know, like in terms of, because like mainly I'm like a sports photographer, so like all the cool sporting events would be happening downtown, you know, but like I would always have to be like leaving my house like hella early or like getting home hella late, you know, like taking the TTC at least like an hour 10 minutes. So I feel like that like it was always kind of tough, but like for me, like I always knew like the benefit of like, you know, leaving the community, because you know you could always bring back the stuff you learned and show other people, you know, like just kind of show them like, you know, there's so much stuff happening outside the community and you can bring those things back and kind of showcase them. So
not at all. I feel like, you know, despite the bad light that the media portrays, despite the things that people, you know, negative connotations and things that people may think, I feel like I've actually gotten more opportunities than some people who may have had a better start than I have, or may have had more resources than I have. But it's because, you know, being in the community that I'm from, I've always wanted to be better. I've always wanted to do more. I've always seen what the gaps are, and I've always been adamant that, you know, I don't want the next generation to have to deal with these things. I want them to be able to have mentors. I want them to be able to have people that they can rely on. I want them to be able to have these opportunities, you know. I've gotten opportunities myself, Some of those aren't as readily available now, you know, obviously, you know, due to the economy and due to like a bunch of other, you know, things. But, you know, I want youth to be able to have those opportunities and grow and be able to share with each other and be able to, you know, build within their community rather than having to go elsewhere.
Somewhat, yeah, 100%. Like, I feel like there's a lot of pressure as being the oldest in a community. Like, obviously sometimes it's financial barriers, but I will say I have been blessed by being surrounded by a community that's honestly family, and I've had access to some amazing opportunities, from like jobs to mentorship to different programs, for sure. I would say like the highlight of my career so far, like I've had a lot of mentorship and friends and family, but the highlight of my career was honestly joining CBC, like, and launching the Jane and Finch Community Bureau. And I got to tell the stories that people genuinely care about from the community and literally show the world that, hey, you may think this thing about our community, but there are so many great people doing great things, from like community leaders to activists to entrepreneurs to artists, and the list goes on.
Yes, I think there are resources out there, but I think growing up in the neighborhood, especially if you don't have connections or if your parents don't have connections, it's kind of hard to access these things if you're not aware of them. And I notice like a lot of my friends, they might have goals and dreams, but they don't know how to contact, they don't know like these organizations exist or this person or this politician can introduce them to this initiative. So a lot of it has to do with awareness and education, and I think we need to improve that and just have a lot more information, let people know that these things exist so they can access them.
Honestly, like, I thank God I have, you know, a two-parent household, and like I have parents that know how to navigate systems a little bit. So while I did have certain things like affect me, like lack of programming, lack of being able to have access to certain things that I would want to do because I either couldn't afford it or couldn't get there in time or just didn't know about it. I can say personally myself, like, I was able to negate a lot of things. While I do think a lot of educational resources in, you know, our public schools should have been more accessible, because when I went to university, I was like, whoa, like, what's going on here? Like, I didn't know that these things were something that I needed until I got there. But I know for myself, like, I was lucky to not have those barriers, but I know for a lot of my friends and family, they had a lot of trouble accessing a lot of resources.
To be honest, like, just life, like communities, like literally the community centers, like just having fun with the people, basketball runs, like everything, firework cracker wars, you know what I say? Water balloon fights, all of that, you know what I say? Like I said, if you know, you know.
My favorite food spot in the neighborhood would probably be El Jefe. It's great deals, good food. Chef Chino there is amazing.
I think with like the amazing work that, you know, the folks in this room are doing, and also the amazing work of like that youth are doing across Jane and Finch, I think we have a pretty bright future if we just stick our heads in it and like not get burnt out with the way that, you know, community runs often. I think it's really easy to burn out because we all want to save the world, we want to save Jane and Finch, we want to do it by ourselves, but I think the future of Jane and Finch, if we work together and if we come together united, it'll be such a bright, beautiful future, and we can really show people that are not from Jane and Finch what communities like Jane and Finch are made of.
So for all the people watching out there who grew up and live in Jane and Finch, you know, it's a great place. There's a lot of activity, a lot of creativity. You can do a lot from the community. I mean, I started my own website, no money, no resources, no connections, and we grew into this big thing where it captured a lot of attention, national media attention, and just touched a lot of people. So I think you can do a lot of things, even if you're lacking some of the resources and money. Just use your creativity and efforts and just join other people, work together. For the people who don't live in Jane and Finch, come to Jane and Finch, learn more about it, meet us there, meet us at the mall, meet us in the community centers. There's so much to do and so much to learn, so many great events, and you'll find that Jane and Finch is a very, very special part of the city of Toronto.
Yeah, I think the future of Jane and Finch will like look a lot different because like it's being gentrified, right? So like I'll bring in all like different types of people, and I feel like, you know, it'll also be like more accessible because like they're building the LRT, so I feel like it'd be easier for people to get around the community and like to move around. And I think the neighborhood would definitely look a lot like different because I know they're building new buildings, and they're starting to like, you know, tear down like some of the older buildings, like connections. So I do feel like, you know, they're gonna bring in new people and the community will change, but I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, change is sometimes good, as long as like you respect the people that were there from the jump, you know. And yeah, it'll look a lot different, but it's like it's not necessarily like always a bad thing.
I hope there's a lot more opportunities for young people. I hope that, you know, there's a lot of development from within the community rather than bringing people, you know, because there is a lot of things being developed. There's the LRT, there's Metro links, there's a lot of new structures and things that are going to be going up in the near future. So what I hope for is that a lot of the positions or a lot of these opportunities will be given to young people or just people in general within the community, so that they have a hand in building their community, so that they have a hand in, you know, what direction things go in, how, you know, these things are being shaped, because they are residents. They do know what would be best for them and their families and, you know, the other residents within the community. So yeah, I hope the best for them, and I hope that they're able to, you know, have a say in how things look.
I'm gonna say the future is bright, just because there's a lot of people who won't give up and won't back down. Like, I know we always say enough is enough, and despite there being so many different challenges, there's always going to be a group of people within the community that will literally never back down. What's that quote? Never back down, never give up. So for sure, I think the future is bright. I would say to people, like, don't sleep on folks from Jane and Finch, because like, we're here, we're hungry, and we're literally gonna get everything we worked for and deserve. I would say it's home. It's a place where it's filled with so much talent, so many beautiful people.
I'll say that despite all the bad name that it gets, despite all of the things that are said about it, the sense of community within Jane and Finch is one of those things where you don't get in a lot of other places. You don't get anywhere else.
What I would share with the world is Jane Finch is a very unique place. It's very multicultural.
The one thing I would share about Jane and Finch is that we're such a beautiful community. Like, there's so much about us that is just lively and beautiful and high-spirited. And I think that it's really easy for people to get conflated with what they see outside of the community, but once you enter here, it's just love and family and community. The best thing ever.
Jane and Finch is actually like a loving place, you know? Like, it's like totally opposite from what's like perceived in the media. Like, some of the like most kind, amazing, and nicest people like live in the community, you know? Like, there's different people from different walks of life, and you wouldn't know that unless you like step foot in the community and actually like try to get to know everyone.
Just meeting the people, honestly, just living in the area, it's a great place. Really, like my experience here is just, I met a lot of people. It changed me as a person, like, you know, just growing up, not growing up the way everyone else grew up. So it's more so just the area in general just really makes who you are.
Just put in a subject line, and then the whole body of the message is just, yo, please, and then just, you know, best regards.
Interesting. Smile, nigga. The hell?
There was deer walking through here.
Deers.
Like full on, like 5-6 deers in a pack, right there.
One day I just looked in the mirror and I did not like what I saw, but I was like, hey, it's all in the day's work, man.
I grew up in JCM.
Okay. What's your favorite food swap?
JCM.
Okay.
And like, do you feel like those changes are already like happening? Like, do you feel like they're already impacting you? And how?
They already started by placing a LRT subway, whatever it's called, right in Jane and Finch. That's bad.
Why would you say it's bad? Like, because I know some people had issues with like water. Like, water wasn't coming to the people's buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have that issue or no?
No.
My friends that Islington and Finch family didn't have water for like 3 days.
Oh, that's why.
And, like, that was going on for like 3 weeks, but I guess that was an issue for you guys?
No, that was not an issue.
Okay.
We're not that trenchy.
It's all good.